Good morning, and thank you everyone for being here. We're standing here on this magnificent river valley, which reminds me that this river valley has always been here. And on this land, people have always been here, drawn by that water in that valley to this place of gathering in order to create community. And just over 150 years ago, people on this cold land across North America made a bold experiment. And they said, we're going to do something that has never been done before. We are going to create a nation on this land, the second largest nation on earth, a nation knit together of people from different backgrounds, folks who've been here for thousands of years, folks who just arrived here last week, and we are going to create the best country in the world. 120 years ago, the province of Alberta was created as part of this magnificent nation. And right now, we are at a crossroads. We're at a time where the very sovereignty of this great nation is under threat from the outside. And we have a premier who is threatening this nation from the inside. Albertans across this province are asking, is Danielle Smith a separatist? Did we elect a separatist as our premier? Did we elect someone who doesn't believe in this country or in this province as our premier? Look at the evidence. Smith has spent years pushing policies and ideas that would rip Alberta out of Canada piece by piece. She's endorsed the so-called Free Alberta strategy, and she's made its author her chief of staff. She passed a Sovereignty Act. She's actively dismantling the RCMP. She's trying to pull Albertans out of the Canada Pension Plan. And in this time where everyone else in the country plays on the same team, even if it's the Edmonton Oilers, Danielle Smith plays for the opponents. She cozies up to Donald Trump instead of standing alongside Canada. She refuses to sign agreements with all the other premiers, talking about how we need to stand up to Trump's tariffs together. She remains one of the only premiers who will not sign agreements with the federal government on things that matter to Albertans, that matter to their pocketbooks every day, like childcare and pharmacare and dental care. Danielle Smith has proven over and over and over again that she is not here to build a better Alberta within a strong Canada. She's not here to build up anything. She's here to tear things down. Danielle Smith loves chaos. Danielle Smith only loves one gear, which is to pick fights. But now she's gone too far. We're now in a world where our very nation is under threat, and Danielle Smith, instead of putting out the fire, throws kindling on it. She's threatened a national unity crisis over plastic straws. I hate paper straws. When you're at Peter's Drive-In trying to have a milkshake with a paper straw, it's very hard. My country is worth more than that. Our country is worth more than that. And yet Danielle Smith, never understanding the consequences of her actions, never understanding that she actually is a premier now, that she's not a radio host anymore. She's not an opposition host anymore. She's not a op-ed columnist who writes about how cigarettes are good for you and cancer is your own fault anymore. She's the premier. She has a responsibility to who we are as a people and who we are as a province, and her responsibility needs to always be to build up this province. So what happened yesterday? Yesterday, the president of the United Conservative Party stated on social media that Albertans are going to get a referendum on separation. That, in fact, the legislation that the province proposed yesterday is entirely designed to give Albertans a referendum on separation. This is at a time where Albertans are worried about getting groceries on the table, where Albertans are worried about the future of their jobs, where Albertans are worried whether the public healthcare system will be there when we need it. And instead of addressing any of these issues, Danielle Smith stokes anger and fear as a merchant of hate and division. I don't know if Danielle Smith wants Alberta to separate. I know she only has one gear, and that one gear is picking fights. And this is not what Albertans want. Albertans don't believe in this. The highest point of separation in any poll in Alberta is lower than the number of votes the Liberals and the NDP got in the election 2 days ago. We're paying a lot of attention to a very small minority of people who do not represent Albertan values. Albertans believe in strong public health care. Albertans believe in staying in the Canada Pension Plan. Albertans believe in being part of something bigger, a Canada that we can be proud of. Now look, there are a lot of very legitimate concerns we have. I've been acting on these concerns on behalf of Albertans and Calgarians for 15 years. The fiscal framework of this country doesn't work well. We have an Environmental Assessment Act that prevents big important things from getting built. We've had a federal government in the last few years that, provoked by Danielle Smith and Jason Kenney, wants to pick fights with us. We can't get there. We need to be able to live in a country where Alberta's economic and social contributions are respected, where Alberta's financial contributions are respected. We need to live in a world where we can build stuff, where we can build pipelines to get our energy exports to market, where we can do that while making consequential fights against climate change. These are not contradictions. This is what grown-up governments do in times of change, and that is not what we have right now. Danielle Smith doesn't believe in any of it. She doesn't believe in a united Canada. Instead, she dances with separatists, not knowing or not caring about the consequences of that dance. This is not just reckless, it is dangerous, and it could cost Alberta everything. I was the mayor of Calgary for 11 years. Calgary has the third largest number of head offices in the country. Those businesses don't do business in Alberta. They do business everywhere. They do business across Canada and around the world, and that capital is mobile. And I will remind you that one or two of those biggest head offices came to Calgary because of economic turmoil in the province of Quebec. Canadian Pacific, Kansas City, is based in Calgary because of what was happening in Quebec. And anyone who's old enough, luckily none of my colleagues are old enough, to remember 1976 and 1980 and 1995, will remember the capital flight out of Quebec. Montreal used to be the financial and business center of this country. And it's not anymore, precisely because we had governments in Quebec who were flirting with separatism and who were playing recklessly with the future of this country, destroying the confidence that citizens and businesses have in the country. Danielle Smith will cost us so much. She'll cost us the health care we rely on, the financial security we've worked hard for, the home that we know and love. She'll cost us our economy. Because she's not just picking fights with Ottawa anymore. She's picking apart our country. This path is just about more wastefulness. Wasting money on referenda that she knows she's going to lose. Wasting money on yet another fair deal panel. Spending millions of dollars on what's next. We know what's next. The Conservatives will lose and Alberta will stay. So we don't need more panels telling us we should have a CP, we should get out of the CPP. We know Albertans don't want that. And I will say this today to Danielle Smith, if you want to flirt with separatism, put your money where your mouth is. Call the referendum yourself. Do it now. Let Albertans resoundingly defeat your vision and then leave public life. Bring it on. And so today, I have a call to action to our fellow Albertans. It's time for all of us to draw the line and tell Danielle Smith she has gone too far, to say loud and clear, we will not stand for Danielle Smith's separatist agenda. Being a proud Albertan does not mean not being a proud Canadian. In fact, it is the same thing. Being a proud Albertan means being a proud Canadian, and we will not allow Danielle Smith to take that away from us. So I'm reaching out to all Albertans today, and I'm saying to have your voice heard, visit separatistsmith.ca. Sign the petition. Add your name to the list of people, of Albertans who are standing up for this country. If you believe that Alberta is stronger in Canada than outside of it, now is the time to speak up. We cannot let them get away with this any longer. Let's tell Danielle Smith, we believe in Alberta, we believe in Canada, and we're not going anywhere. So, let's take questions.
All right, everyone, thank you very much. There are no questions on online or anything like that right now. So, but everybody's here. Just come on over to me so we can make sure that we capture your question. And Lisa Johnson is first from Canadian Press.
Hi, sorry, this is off topic.
Oh, come on! I've got such a headwind here.
I mean,
All right.
I'll visit the website and answer those questions myself. But
Okay.
you know, the NDP has been talking a lot about how Danielle Smith's trips to the United States. Sorry, this is a post-mortem election question.
Yeah, sure.
Her trips to the United States should be considered in-kind donations to the Carney campaign. I mean, you said something similar yesterday. I'm wondering if you could put your electoral map analyst hat on and give me some specific examples, because the Liberals have been almost shut out of the prairies. The Conservatives gained a lot of seats in Ontario. Where specifically do you see Danielle Smith's impact on the federal election?
Yeah, no, I can absolutely tell you that. You know, Pierre Poilievre went into this federal election with a 25-point lead. He squandered a 25-point lead, which is probably unheard of in Canadian political history. And certainly he did okay, but he lost his own seat. And it's very, very clear from the reaction of the federal party, the federal Conservative Party, that this really was to do with his response to Donald Trump. And he tried to pivot very hard to basically say, oh, no, I'm not about Trump, I'm not about Trump. But the damage was already done. And that damage, a lot of it can be laid at the feet of Danielle Smith. She went on American TV, radio, and websites and said Poilievre and Trump are in sync. The Liberals used that in an attack ad. She asked for foreign interference in the election. She asked the Trump administration, as if anyone in the Trump administration would ever listen to her or knows who she is. But she went out and asked the Trump administration to pull back on the tariffs just for the election. Beat us up later just so Poilievre can win in the first place. She's so bad at this, and she's so incompetent. And it is absolutely the case that in Atlantic Canada, in Toronto, in Manitoba, in Greater Vancouver, where the Conservatives were looking to pick up seats, they just didn't. And even here in Alberta, sure, Alberta's very blue. Alberta's always been very blue. The Liberals have the same number of seats they had before. And so she really has not been able to effect that change even in her own province.
And a follow-up to that, yesterday she was asked if she would take responsibility for undermining Mr. Poilievre's campaign with some of her comments, and she said that she hadn't been in the media for the past 2 weeks of the campaign, and that she didn't want her name on the ballot in this election. She tried to stay
It was the media
out of it.
who forced her to do it.
And that
They forced her to fly to Florida and raise money for PragerU. They forced her to go on Breitbart. The media are so mean to her.
she also argued that the campaign really solidified in the last 2 weeks.
She sort of told on herself, eh? She actually said, I got benched by Poilievre. I wasn't allowed to go to Poilievre's rally. I was sent to the other side of the world in Korea and Japan so that I wouldn't interfere with Poilievre. And guess what? Poilievre did better when I shut up. So she kind of told on herself that she's been doing this the entire time. But here's the thing about Danielle Smith. Danielle Smith is exceptionally good. I always say she's exceptionally good at two things: picking fights and wasting money. There's actually a third thing. The third thing she's exceptionally good at is blaming other people. So for all of her mistakes, we've never seen Danielle be like Ralph Klein or Doug Ford and actually say, wow, I was wrong, I'm sorry. Or wow, we made a mistake. The only thing we ever hear from Premier Danielle Smith is blaming other people. She blames bureaucrats. She blames the head of AHS. She blames her own former cabinet ministers. She blames the opposition who haven't been in power in 6 years. And now she's blaming the media for forcing her to talk. One of these days, hopefully, we will see a grown-up premier who actually stands up and takes some responsibility for something.
Sean Amato from City News.
Hi there. On today's topic, when you say that this is about plastic straws, I think we all here get the reference. But do you not risk coming off as insensitive to some of the valid concerns that Albertans do have within Confederation?
We have very serious concerns. And so, for example, Danielle Smith only talks about the energy sector. She has not approved a single mile, a single yard of pipeline. The UCP hasn't in the 6 years that they have been in power. And she never talks about the agriculture sector. What has she done to protect markets and transportation corridors for canola and potatoes? She went to Japan and South Korea. She didn't go to China. She didn't go to advocate on behalf of getting rid of those tariffs. She hasn't said one word about equalization in this province. Meanwhile, in my time, even in municipal politics, I helped get a pipeline built. I went across the country and around the world to many of the same folks she met with in Korea to try and build markets for Canadian oil and gas. So don't look at what she says, look at what she does. And in reality, she just wants to pick fights. She doesn't want to win them. And what we need is a government that actually can make a difference for Albertans. Because Danielle Smith's statement yesterday, in which she was so angry and violent with the Prime Minister, isn't going to get us a deal on childcare. It's not going to reduce the price of groceries, and it sure as hell isn't going to get a pipeline built. And so, yeah, the grievances are very real. I'm an Albertan. I've been in this province. I understand the disrespect that we feel, but all she does is stoke anger on it instead of actually solving the problems.
Now that Bill 54 is out there, political scientist Jared Wesley called it anti-democratic, Trumpian, one of the worst pieces of legislation he's seen. What's your take?
The provincial government has now introduced an amendment to the Elections Act, which essentially gets rid of all the rules. It creates a US-style electoral system in the hopes that it'll benefit them and only them. Brings back dark money, brings back unlimited money, makes it harder for people to vote, particularly if they're seniors or if they are new citizens or if they are people who are vulnerable. All of this is not to improve democracy. All of it is in the hopes that people who will not vote Conservative will find it harder to vote. That's all it is. It's not going to work. It's never worked. Conservative governments have often tried to do this. But here's the thing. You're telling students that they can't vote on campus anymore? Then we're going to drive students to the places they can vote. That's right. You are telling people who without photo ID that they cannot vote? We're going to get them photo ID. You're telling dark money that it can win an election? We're going to tell you people win elections, money doesn't win elections. And it will just make us even stronger to ensure that we are protecting democracy and fighting against these dirty tricks.
Cindy Tran from the Edmonton Journal.
Hi, thanks so much for taking my questions. I was speaking to a campaign strategist today.
Cindy, can you speak up just a little? There's a bit of wind.
Sure, I'm a little soft-spoken, but I'll try. So I was speaking to a campaign strategist today, and he was saying that a lot of Albertans feel that this Liberal government is just going to burn them a lot more. What do you think Albertans want to see from this Liberal government, and how does the province work with Mark Carney's government?
Yeah, so we've got a new Prime Minister. This new Prime Minister is going to be the Prime Minister despite being just short of a majority. I don't see any scenario where we have a federal election before 2 to 3 years from now. So the Prime Minister is the Prime Minister. And we could be upset about it, we could be mad about it, we could be unhappy. Sure, there's nothing wrong with that. But then we got to go back to work. And we got to actually get stuff done. And we can't wait another 2 or 3 years to actually get anything done for Albertans. So yeah, some of the things that Premier Smith talks about are actually important. She throws in plastic straws for some unknown reason, but some of the things she talks about are important. We have to get energy infrastructure built. We've got energy infrastructure built. We built the only pipeline to Tidewater. Danielle Smith doesn't have a single proposal in front of her right now. We need better environmental impact legislation. The Harper legislation was terrible. The Trudeau legislation was also terrible. You know, it took us nearly 10 years in Calgary to get the Springbank Dry Dam built. Forget about pipelines. And so we need environmental legislation that makes sense. And I'm intrigued by some of the things that Mr. Carney said during the election about one window of approval, about timelines on environmental approval. These are things that are really important to Albertans. We also need a much, much better system to protect our farmers and ranchers in this community, especially in the face of threats. We need to be able to build our economy, whether it's high tech or film, or financial services. We need to become a global center of excellence in all of these areas. We need great research happening in our post-secondary institutions. So that's just a bit of a laundry list of the things that the federal government can help with. But immediately attacking a guy who just won an election, a historic election, and insulting him is not the way you're going to get any of that built. And so the Premier can stoke anger and fear as much as she wants, but those are empty calories. Those are calories that maybe get people good for a day or two. that, make you feel good about yourself, that gets your base excited, but they're not nutritious. They don't build Alberta going forward. And it really is time to stop stoking the anger and actually work on getting things done, as we have done, as we have proved we can done, as I have proved I can do, and as the Premier has not.
Catherine Grgowski, Alberta Today.
Hi, yeah, thank you. So you have launched this website with a petition. The pro-separatists have launched their own petition. It's pretty clear what the pro-separatists are going to do with their petition. What do you hope to do? What's the next steps that will come out of people signing this?
So you're going to hear a lot of things from us over the next few weeks on this issue. As the government's plans become more clear, one of the other things they did yesterday is they made it much easier for a referendum to get on the ballot. To which I simply answer, Premier, if you want a referendum on the ballot, put a referendum on the ballot. You know what? We'll vote for that in the House. Let's get this going. But in reality, what we need to do is help Albertans understand this is real and this is serious. And that this isn't just about her blowing smoke like she likes to do, but this is actually putting our nation at risk. This is threatening and it's dangerous. And so we want Albertans to sign up and stand up for Canada so that we help people understand that there are way, 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 way more Albertans who are proud Canadians than there are these folks we're listening to who want to tear our country apart.
Sure. And with the makeup of Parliament, there's more Bloc than NDP, and Bloc Québécois have their own opinions on building pipelines. So when we're talking about national unity and building projects, how do you have those negotiations and convince them that pipelines are not bad?
Look, the Bloc Québécois lost a whole bunch of seats on Monday. They are not representative of the people of Quebec. But when you realize that even the Premier of Quebec, who I've had a lot of tussles with about pipelines, is now speaking much more positively about pipelines than he ever has before, I think that Prime Minister Carney has an incredible opportunity to really be able to do some nation building here. And quite frankly, the Bloc, Mr. Blanchette, is just as irrelevant as he has ever been.
Sean McLoone from CTV.
I think you might have already answered this question, but I'll ask it anyways. What do you have to say to pro-separation voices who suggest we need to have democratic outlets like a possible separation referendum to allow people to voice their opinions and their feelings? And like if we don't have that type of option for those feelings, is there a possibility it could boil over into undemocratic or unhealthy ways?
Well, it is undemocratic and unhealthy right now. We have a tiny minority of people who are pretending to set the agenda. I've got no problem with actually going to Albertans and seeing what they really think. The challenge here is the Premier doesn't want to do that because she knows she'll lose. And she benefits from just protracting this fight as long as she possibly can and just keeping people angry. And that's no good for anybody. It's not good for people's mental health. It's not good for Alberta as a whole. And, if you want to be democratic, I'm all for it. But the thing is, in a democracy, when you lose, you respect the outcome. And that's exactly what the Premier refuses to do.
Morgan Black, Global.
Hello. We talked to ministers about this with the referendum in question, and, they point to it being costly, time-consuming. It doesn't seem like they have much of an appetite for it.
Sorry, who does not?
Just general ministers when we're scrubbing them at
general ministers.
Yes. Because they point to it being like resource-heavy, costly, and things like that. So if you're saying like let's make this vote happen to see what Albertans really think, is there also that side of it too that it'll be
because what's
costly?
even costlier and even resource heavier is dragging this on forever. We've had Danielle Smith and Jason Kenney spend millions of dollars on a fair deal panel. We've had them spend $2 million on Preston Manning to publish his fictional novel as though it were fact. We've had them spend $2 million on a bunch of anti-vax Twitter personalities to print out their Twitter feeds and get people angry. And this will just be more and more and more of that. And that's what Danielle Smith benefits from. She's a chaos agent. She benefits from the chaos. And I'm just saying, I'd rather just pull off the Band-Aid and get this done once and for all. Bring it on. And while we're at it, if you want to have a referendum on CPP, if you promise you'll shut up about that too, let's do that. And let's have Albertans actually say no, hands off our pensions.
That's all the questions,
Okay,
sir.
thanks everybody.
Thank you.